I've asked 3,742 producers on my email list and you guys on my community tab here on YouTube, what is the best DAW? I've installed and downloaded them all and here are the results. I included it because it is seen for a long time as the industry standard, but the development stalled, features were far behind the competition, the pricing and limitations were outright ridiculous and it was losing money and market share like crazy. I'm talking about Pro Tools. Eventually Pro Tools was sold to an investment firm which immediately dropped the ridiculous pricing and started developing finally some new features. And I tried to install the software for you, but after 2 hours I rage quit. It is horribly convoluted with an installer, digital licenser software, and although I clicked on downloading the free version, it wanted me to buy a license before I could try the free version. The free version is 99 euros a year and the full version is 600 euros a year. Literally, you can buy any other software in this video that you can actually install, which has more features and is cheaper. The next one I actually quite like. The user interface might be a bit overwhelming for a beginner because there is a lot of things going on the screen at once. But the layout is quite standard for a DAW and I've used a lot of DAWs over the years and you'll find stuff quite easily. The plugins and sounds are on the right, the timeline is in the middle and the properties and 2 channel strips are on the left. The advantage of this DAW is that it is free and you can use third-party VST plugins, which not a lot of free apps allow you to do. Also, the installation process is something that a lot of software in this list can learn a lesson or 2, maybe 3 from. I'm pleasantly surprised by the versatility and the usefulness of the software for a free app, but regretfully it works only on Windows. It's called Cakewalk by BandLab, not to confuse by Cakewalk and Cakewalk Sonar, Cakewalk Next or BandLab by BandLab, but this is Cakewalk by BandLab, I think, but I would definitely recommend it. The next DAW on this list suffers from the same problems as Pro Tools. I promise it will get better in this video. In my last video I tried to install the software but I gave up after 8 hours. But this time I had more luck by clicking on download and don't get the actual download link. But eventually I managed to find the downloader to download the software and then you need to install the downloader. Then the downloader needs to be updated, so the downloader downloads the update and the e-licenser needs to be installed, then it needs to be updated and started. Then it says that it is closed down. Yeah, so why you bother me with that? So after 30 minutes and I haven't even downloaded the actual software yet because only now I can download the software. But I got it to work. It installs a tremendous amount of bloatware, an activation manager, an e-licenser controller, the Steinberg download, Steinberg library. Anyway, I'm talking about the immensely hard to install Cubase. The user interface is, to be honest, a little bit dull and monochrome. The channel strip is on the left and the inspector is next to it. The transport controls are on the bottom and the browser is on the right. Luckily you can drag and drop instruments and samples, which is super user friendly. I could quickly find my way around the software just by clicking and dragging around. To be honest, I had a little bit of trouble using a lot of my virtual instruments. I only have a few in the list. I guess that plugins need to be installed into a specific directory, but I couldn't find a way to change that directory in the software to the directory that I installed all my plugins in. I also couldn't manage to get time stretching to work on my samples. Setting the project BPM to the loop BPM and importing the loop makes the samples out of sync with the beat. I have no idea what is going on. I'm probably overlooking something. It would be weird if the software couldn't do that. All in all, some parts of the software are incredibly frustrating and other parts are pretty smooth. The software definitely has its strengths and I could see myself using it, but the ridiculously complicated installation process and the fear of not being able to reinstall it again after my Windows crashes again, yeah, makes it a no-go for me. If I could give Steinberg a tip, ditch the bloatware, ditch the installer and integrate a installer-like thing in the DAW itself like any other software in this list. The light version of Cubase costs $99 and the full version is $600. The next DAW is one of the newer DAWs around. It came out a couple of years ago, but it fought its way in absolutely no time in between the big DAWs. The amount of stock plugins are pretty extensive. Everything you could possibly need is already in the software, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of the integrated synthesizers. But of course, it's no problem to add your own VST or ARA plugins. And this is the software that I use on a regular basis, mainly for voiceovers for my YouTube videos, because Fairlight and DaVinci Resolve absolutely sucks. It is not able to record audio without crackles on a Core i9 processor. It's absolutely ridiculous. In this DAW you can press Ctrl Z, which resets the playhead, which makes recording retakes with a count in absolutely blazingly fast. Regretfully, I have regular crashes with the software on both my Macs before I had Windows and on my Windows computers, and support tickets are often not answered, and if they're answered they blame the plugins while other software works just fine. And I do have to mention that the software becomes sluggish and unresponsive with bigger projects. Recently I switched to another DAW in this list because I think it's a little bit more convenient and more stable. More on that later. I name a few things I like about this software. First of all, the search feature for plugins, presets and files. Also, you can drag and drop your plugins on your project. Also, the editor clips stick really nicely to the grid. Then the preview file browser with auto tempo adjust to your project. I like also the scratchpad just to try things out. Automation, right click on a point and just enter a value. Then the range tool from Pro Tools, so the upper section of a clip means something different than the lower section of a clip when you hover over it with the mouse. With one you edit and with the other you grab the clip. This is Studio One, and Studio One is feature-rich, complete and only costs 200 euros. There is a free trial version available, and Melodyne to auto-tune your vocals is included, so you can finally make Madonna sing like an angel. And Studio One is also the software that I use to create a collection of chords, because I've always struggled a little bit with music theory. The D minor 7th suspended and the B major yada yada yada. So I created MIDI files for all chords that I can easily drag and drop into my project. I select the folder of the key of my song and all relevant chords are displayed. The basic chords, but also all the variations of the basic chords, and chord progressions of all the big hits to increase the chances of producing a banger. Which makes making my songs so much faster and easier. Because I wanted to share this with you, you can now download this MIDI chords pack for just a couple of bucks. Because it's a collection of MIDI files, it works in all DAWs. I prefer not to do sponsorships, but this helps me to create videos, pay the rent and help the community with something useful. I noticed from my previous videos that a lot of people confuse audio editors like Audition and Audacity with DAWs. And although you can edit audio with DAWs, DAWs have extra features for things like tempo and transient detection, for example, to synchronize the audio with the beat grid. For example, putting a kick on every beat at 123 BPM is very hard to do in an audio editor. Not impossible, but very hard. And DAWs make it easier to create songs from scratch, while audio editors are made to edit existing audio. In the next DAW, I actually learned producing. It was my go-to DAW for years, but I grew extremely frustrated by the sheer amount of bugs that were in the software for years and the lack of development of the software. But I have to admit that I had it never crash on me, not once, despite the bugs. And my frustration grew because something simple like searching for a plugin wasn't possible for years. You had to plow through your whole big list of all your plugins, and then the mono version, the stereo version, all were in there. And then Apple suddenly came to their senses and implemented the search feature for plugins. Thank you. Of course, I'm talking about Logic. The software looks really nice, and I like that you have two channel strips on the left, one for the current track and one for the parent. The stock plugins are okay, but nothing to write home about, except the equalizer that regularly deviates from other equalizers. It supports ARA plugins like Melodyne to pitch correct your vocals. Logic can read GarageBand files, that's the free app that is included with new Macs or old Macs. But when it runs out of system resources, the software stops working and shows an error message. Any other software crackles a bit and continues. Then you have to press spacebar, enter spacebar, spacebar, enter spacebar. Extremely annoying. Regretfully, time stretching is a destructive action and therefore extremely annoying. Also, the preview browser works sometimes and sometimes not. When it has a good day it works. Yeah, that's another bug. And you might wonder why the screen recording looks so choppy. Well, welcome to the full Apple experience. Suddenly QuickTime recording stopped working smoothly after a system update, and reinstalling the system didn't fix the problem. Logic is very feature rich for its price. Everything is in there, 200 euros, but it's regretfully only available for the Mac and not Windows. But please stay away from arrogant companies like Apple. If you need support, you don't get it. And this is coming from a guy that has countless iPhones, iPods, iPads, iMacs, MacBooks for years, and I had my fair share of dealings with Apple's non-existing service. And now I'm curious, what is your favorite DAW? You can take the poll in the description, and you can also share in the comments with everyone why this is your favorite DAW, and mention at least 3 pros and 3 cons so other people watching this video can make an informed decision. A year ago I switched to this software, not because Studio One is bad, but mainly because this one just works a little bit easier in my opinion. The main thing that you have to wrap your head around is this is Ableton Live, which is live performance software, hence the name, and a DAW. With the performance part you can start new sounds in the tempo of the track and then add or subtract existing elements that you've programmed in the software. The DAW part is your traditional non-linear editing tool to create a track from scratch. Because Ableton Live is 2-in-1 software basically, it allows you to program your sounds, perform a gig in the live mode, then record it, and then you can later edit all the track information, all the elements in the DAW itself, which makes track creation extremely fast. And that's a workflow that not a lot of DAWs in this video offer. But if you want, you can create a track the traditional way. You are in no way forced to use this feature. And no, it's not a looker. It looks like the first user interface that was developed by Xerox, but yeah, it works. I especially like the editor that you can control with your keyboard. There is a sort of mouse cursor there. It's like when Microsoft Word and Lego had a baby. Ableton's own plugins are shown on the bottom of the screen. Regretfully, you can't resize this because it takes up a tremendous amount of space. Third-party plugins show up with ugly buttons, but yeah, you can add some buttons, but yeah, might need some work. The stock plugins are pretty good, and especially the glue compressor is worth mentioning because of its good sound quality. I think this is one of the best DAW for beginners because it doesn't seem overly complicated with too many options and too many things on the screen, while all the features are still there. You can search for plugins and sounds and even categorize them. The easiness of time stretching is one of the big plus points for Ableton. Ableton is available for Windows and Mac and costs either 79 euros or 600 euros. There are a lot more DAWs than the ones in this video. I only made a top 5. The rest was all voted out of the top 5, but I'll name some of them here in my honorable mentions section. First of all, Bitwig Studio. From what I gather from the website, it looks really nice and is available for Mac, Windows and even Linux. Licenses vary from 100 to 400 euros. Then Acoustica Mixcraft. The software looks really good on the website, but Mixcraft is only available for Windows and costs either $25 or $100 depending on your license. The next one is Reaper, which has a very small but very vocal fanbase always in my comments. I've tried it for my free DAWs video and yeah, it is actually pretty decent, but in my opinion it lacks in the user-friendliness department. It's available for Mac, Windows and Linux. The unlimited trial version is free and complete. A personal license is 60 euros and a commercial one 225. For the price of the commercial license, I think there are better and easier DAWs in this video for less. Then Reason is a full-featured standalone DAW which has also a version that is an instrument rack plugin for other DAWs. I know it's a little bit confusing. With an instrument rack you can place multiple instruments on top of each other, so you can stack plugins and effect plugins, so instrument plugins and effect plugins on top of each other. Reason costs 350 euros. This list is by no means complete. If your DAW is not in this list, then share your favorite DAW in the comments with some pros and cons. And by the way, I will link all the websites of all the DAWs in the description below. Then the number one in this list. Personally, I don't know how people can work with this software. I find the workflow extremely counterintuitive and annoying. And because of its unconventional workflow, it is much harder to switch to a real DAW, well, to another DAW later. It's often mocked by producers as a kid's toy. And although it's not my piece of cake, many people seem to love it as you voted it number one for multiple years in a row. The software has everything you need and many number one hits are made with this software. It is used by many famous DJs like Martin Garrix, Mesto, Afrojack and Avicii, rest in peace. The drum sequencer to create a drum pattern, in my opinion, is one of the standout features of this software. I'm talking, of course, about FL Studio. Licenses range from 100 to 540 euros, but in contrast to most DAWs in this video, you don't need a full version. If you're looking for a free DAW, then check out my video here on the screen. Don't forget to subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.